You ever feel the knife before it cuts? I did. It wasn't in my back. It was in my heart. My son, my own flesh and blood, was laughing with his wife, planning how they'd take everything I'd ever worked for. But the thing they didn't know, I wasn't the fragile old woman they thought I was. I heard everything, and I had my own plan. My name's Margaret. I'm 65. I've lived long enough to know that money changes people. But I never thought it would change my own son, David. He used to be my reason to wake up every morning. The boy with bright eyes and a good heart. And his wife, Emma. She was sweet once. Or maybe she just pretended well. Either way, the day I realized their smiles weren't real anymore, something inside me broke. It started small, like all betrayals do. David began visiting less often. Calls became shorter. Texts turned into one-word replies. And then, when they did come over, they looked around my house a little too long. At the furniture, the jewelry box, the safe I kept in the corner of my room. One day I caught Emma whispering, "Once she's gone, we'll be set." She didn't know I was standing right behind the door. That sentence, those words, didn't just pierce my heart. They woke something up in me. I wasn't going to let anyone take what I'd built, not even my son. I started paying attention to everything. The tone of their voices, the way they spoke to each other. The sudden curiosity about my will. "Mom," David said one night over dinner, "you've done well for yourself all these years. But you're getting older and you know paperwork can get messy. Maybe I should handle your finances now." He said it casually, smiling, as if he was doing me a favor. I just nodded, pretending to agree, my spoon shaking slightly as I lifted it to my lips. Inside I was trembling, but not with fear, with rage, because I knew that tone. The one people use when they've already decided what's theirs. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking around the quiet house that had held my entire life. Every photo on the wall had a memory. Every corner had laughter. And now, all of it felt like something they were waiting to claim. The next few weeks, their behavior became obvious. Emma started asking about my medical checkups, what medications I was on, if I had any serious conditions. Her voice always sounded concerned, but her eyes were measuring me, like a vulture circling above a meal. And my dear son? He started suggesting I move in with them. He said, "Mom, the house is too big for you. You'll be safer with us." Safer. That word made me laugh. Safer for who? So I played along. I pretended to be confused sometimes. Misplaced my glasses. Forgot where I'd left my keys. Just to see how far they'd go. And oh, they went far. One afternoon, when I told them I'd forgotten the code to my safe, I caught them later whispering in the kitchen. Emma said, "She's losing it, David. It's time we handle things before someone else does." That was all I needed to hear. See, what they didn't know was that I wasn't losing my memory. I was recording everything. After my husband died, I'd installed small cameras in the living room and kitchen for safety. I never removed them. And for the first time, I was thankful for my paranoia. I started collecting evidence. Every whisper, every greedy laugh, every plan they made when they thought I wasn't listening. And in between those moments, I smiled at them, baked their favorite cookies, played the perfect grandma. Because if they were going to play me for a fool, I'd play them better. Climax, the breaking point, it all came crashing down one night. I'd invited them for dinner. The table was set. My best dishes, candlelight, the smell of roasted lamb filling the air. I wanted them comfortable. Careless. Halfway through the meal, David cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk about your will." I looked up from my plate. "What about it, dear?" Emma leaned in, her voice soft and sugar-coated. "We just want to make sure everything's handled right. You know, before it's too late. Before it's too late." The nerve, I smiled. "You're right, sweetheart. It should be handled properly. In fact," I stood up and walked to the living room. I already did. I came back holding an envelope, thick, sealed and addressed to my lawyer. Their eyes followed it like hungry dogs. "What's that?" David asked. "Oh, just some paperwork. You'll find out soon enough," I said, setting it beside my plate. And then, as they continued eating, pretending to be calm, I pressed a small button on my phone, one that connected to my TV. The screen flickered, and suddenly their own voices filled the room. Emma's voice. "Once she's gone, we'll be set." David's voice. "Don't worry, she won't even notice." The color drained from their faces. I didn't say a word. I just watched them realize I'd known everything. Finally, I spoke. "I raised you better than this, David." Tears burned my eyes, but my voice stayed firm. "You think because I'm old, I'm blind, but I see clearer now than ever." He tried to speak, but words failed him. Emma stood up first, mumbling something about a misunderstanding. I laughed. "A misunderstanding? You called my death your plan." The silence in that room was so heavy, I could feel it pressing on my chest. Then I said something that shut them up completely. "I already changed my will." Their eyes widened. "Yes," I continued. "Everything I own, every penny, every property, goes to a charity for children who actually know the meaning of kindness." David stood up, shaking. "Mom, you can't." "Oh, but I can." I cut him off. "I did it weeks ago. You should have thought of that before plotting behind my back." Emma's lips trembled. "You'll regret this." I smiled softly. "No, dear. You will." And with that, I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "Get out of my house." They didn't move at first. Then, slowly, they gathered their things, eyes lowered, and walked out without another word. As the door closed behind them, I felt something break inside me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was peace. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I missed my son, even after everything. No matter what he'd done, a mother's heart doesn't stop caring. But I knew keeping him close would only destroy what little peace I had left. And then something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. From David. It wasn't an apology. It was a plea. He said he'd lost his job, that Emma had left him, that he was sorry, and wanted to see me. I read it 3 times before setting it down. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. But forgiveness, that's a hard thing, so I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I focused on my own life. I started gardening again, reading, volunteering at the local shelter. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder or waiting for someone to visit out of guilt or greed. And every evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon, I'd sit on my porch with a cup of tea and think about how life comes full circle. How sometimes the people you die for are the same ones who'd kill your peace for a bit of money. But you know what? That's okay, because I still have myself, and that's something no one can take. A few months later, I got a call from my lawyer. He said, "Mrs. Dawson, there's been an inquiry about your will. Someone's been trying to access your financial records." I knew who. So I told him, "Keep everything as it is, but tell whoever's asking. I already know." Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I hadn't seen in months. "I'm sorry, Mom." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "Me too, son. Me too." But I didn't send it. I just deleted it, because some things don't need a reply. You see, age doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. And sometimes, silence is the loudest answer you can give. I may have lost my son to greed, but I found my strength again. And in this life, that's the greatest fortune there is. If you want to hear what happened when he came back years later, watch the next story. You think secrets die when you do, but sometimes they find their way back, years after everything had finally healed. My grandson, Leo, found a letter I'd hidden for decades. A letter that could destroy the peace I'd fought my whole life to build. And when he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Grandma, why didn't you tell me?" I didn't have an answer. I thought my story was over. David had rebuilt his life. Leo was in college, chasing his dreams. The house was alive again, full of laughter, Sunday dinners, and the smell of fresh-baked bread. After years of pain, I'd finally found peace. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Because there was still one thing they didn't know. A secret I'd buried deep in a box behind the old piano. A letter that held the truth about everything I'd done to protect them. And one quiet afternoon, Leo found it. It was a warm Sunday. Leo had come home for the weekend, all grown up now. Taller than his father, kind-hearted like he'd always been. He was helping me clean the house before heading back. "Grandma," he said, pulling open an old cabinet. "What's this?" My heart froze when I saw the small wooden box in his hands. Dark, worn, tied shut with a thin ribbon. I hadn't touched it in 20 years. "Just some old papers," I said quickly. "Nothing important." But Leo, being the curious soul he was, smiled and said, "Well, then you won't mind if I take a peek, right?" Before I could stop him, he untied the ribbon. Inside was a single letter. The paper yellowed. The ink faded, but the words still sharp enough to cut open old wounds. It was addressed to David Dawson. Written by me. Dated nearly 25 years ago. I watched as Leo unfolded it. His eyes moved quickly, line by line, and with every second his expression changed. Confusion, shock, pain. He whispered, "Grandma, this says you disowned Dad before he ever tried to take your money?" I closed my eyes. So the past had finally caught up. "Yes," I said quietly. "But it's not what you think." He looked at me, his voice trembling. "You cut him off long before he betrayed you. You wrote that he was reckless, that you couldn't trust him with money." I took a deep breath. I did, because I thought it would save him. Back then, David had been spiraling. After his father died, he turned to gambling. Small bets at first, then larger ones. He was barely 25 when I found out he'd borrowed money from the wrong people. I'd begged him to stop. He didn't listen, so I made a choice. The hardest one a mother could ever make. I changed the will. I wrote that letter and sent it to my lawyer, cutting him off completely. I thought that by taking away his access to money, I could force him to start over, to learn the value of hard work. But what I didn't know was that my decision would push him further away, that it would set off a chain of pain that would follow us for decades. "Why didn't you tell Dad?" Leo asked, still holding the letter. "Why didn't you tell him you did it to save him?" "Because he wouldn't have believed me," I said softly. Back then he hated me for it. He thought I was cruel. And when he and Emma started their plan years later, I thought, maybe I deserved it. Leo shook his head. "No, Grandma. You don't deserve blame for loving someone too much." I smiled sadly. Love can destroy just as easily as hate, Leo. Sometimes when you try to protect someone, you only end up breaking them. He didn't speak. He just folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. But I could see the thoughts racing through his mind. The way children start to realize their heroes aren't perfect, that love isn't always pure or painless. That evening, David came by for dinner. He'd been helping out with a local workshop, teaching carpentry to young men who'd lost their way. He looked peaceful, like the son I used to know. But Leo couldn't hide the truth. During dinner, he suddenly said, "Dad, did you know Grandma wrote you a letter years before everything happened?" The air froze. David frowned. "What letter?" I felt my stomach drop. Leo stood up and brought it over. He handed it to his father. David's hands trembled as he unfolded it, and as he read, his eyes glistened with tears. When he looked up, he whispered, "So all those years, you were trying to protect me?" I nodded. He pressed his lips together, trying to hold back his emotions. "I thought you hated me," he said. "I thought you never forgave me for being a failure." "Oh, David," I said, reaching for his hand. "I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to save you without losing you." He lowered his head, tears falling silently. For the first time in decades, we truly understood each other. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The rain tapped against the windows, just like it had the night David first betrayed me all those years ago. But this time, it felt different, peaceful, final. Still, part of me ached, because even though my son forgave me, I couldn't forgive myself for the pain I'd caused him. I took out another envelope from the same box, one no one had seen before. It was my last letter, written to both of them, to be read after I'm gone. In it, I told them everything. How I never stopped watching over them, even when I pretended to be angry. How every cruel choice I made came from love. And how, despite everything, I'd never once regretted being their mother and grandmother. I sealed it again, hiding it under the piano. Not to be found now, but someday, when they were ready. Weeks passed. Life went back to normal. Or at least as normal as life can be after reopening old wounds. But Leo, he changed. He started visiting more often, helping around the house, listening more, asking less. One evening, I found him sitting outside on the porch, staring at the stars. He said, "Grandma, I used to think being strong meant not needing anyone. But you showed me that being strong means loving, even when it hurts." I smiled, tears filling my eyes. "You learned that from your father, too," I said. He shook his head. "No, Grandma, I learned it from you." Years passed again. Leo graduated, got married, and had a daughter, Lily. And when I held her for the first time, tiny and perfect in my arms, I whispered the same words I'd once said to her father. "No matter what happens, you'll always be safe." My health started to fade soon after. Nothing dramatic. Just time doing what time does best. But I wasn't scared, because this time, I knew they'd all be okay. And when the day finally came that I closed my eyes for the last time, I hoped they'd find that second letter. The one that would remind them that even broken families can find their way back to love. You see, life isn't about perfect endings. It's about messy middles, painful lessons, and quiet forgiveness. I made mistakes, many of them, but I also learned that sometimes love doesn't look gentle. Sometimes love looks like sacrifice, like silence, like a letter never meant to be read. So if you're listening to this, and there's someone you've drifted away from, someone who hurt you, or someone you hurt, don't wait for time to fix it. Time only hides pain. It doesn't heal it. Reach out. Say the words you've been holding in, because once the door closes for good, all that's left are the things we wish we'd said sooner. If you want to hear the story Lily discovers years later about her family's hidden past, watch the next story. 5 years after my son betrayed me, he knocked on my door again. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a little boy, no older than 6, holding a torn teddy bear. And when the boy looked up at me with those same blue eyes my son once had, I knew this story wasn't over. You'd think time heals all wounds. But when it comes to family, time doesn't heal. It just hides the pain under layers of silence. For 5 long years I lived alone. Peaceful, but lonely. The house stayed the same. Quiet, filled with memories that whispered louder than any words could. Then one rainy afternoon, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the door and there he was. David, my son, the same boy I raised, now looking like a ghost of himself. And next to him, a child, his son, my grandson. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. We just stood there in the cold rain, staring. Then he whispered, "Mom, I have nowhere else to go." My heart wanted to slam the door shut. My hands didn't. I stepped aside. "Come in." The little boy smiled at me shyly as he walked past, his small shoes squeaking against the floor. I saw how thin David looked. The confidence he once wore like armor was gone. His eyes were tired, guilty. And as I watched him dry the boy's hair with his sleeve, I realized this wasn't the same man who tried to take my money. This was someone who'd lost everything. They sat at the table silent. I made tea, because that's what mothers do, even when their hearts are breaking. I finally asked, "Where's Emma?" He hesitated. "Gone." That one word said more than any explanation ever could. Apparently, after their plan fell apart, things got worse. David lost his job. They argued constantly. Emma left with another man and never looked back. He was left alone, drowning in debt, until one day she dropped their son, Leo, at his doorstep and disappeared. "So now it's just us," he said quietly, staring into his cup. I didn't respond. I didn't know if I should pity him or scold him. But then Leo looked up and said, "Grandma, your house smells nice." And that broke something inside me. It had been so long since anyone called me Grandma. Days turned into weeks. They stayed in the guest room, the same one David used to sleep in when he was a boy. Leo filled the house with laughter again, something I hadn't heard in years. He'd follow me into the kitchen, help me water plants, and tell me stories from school. But behind the smiles, I could still feel the tension. Every night when Leo went to bed, David and I would sit across from each other in silence. So many words to say, and yet neither of us could begin. One night, I finally broke it. "Why are you really here, David?" He looked up, guilt written all over his face. "I wanted to make things right, Mom." His voice cracked. I was stupid, greedy. I thought I was doing what was best for my family. But I hurt the only person who ever truly loved me. I said nothing. I just stared at him, the man my son had become. And for the first time in years, I saw regret, real regret. I wish I could say things got better right away. But forgiveness isn't like turning on a light. It's like watching a sunrise. Slow, uncertain, sometimes hidden behind clouds. One morning, I caught David in my study. He was holding an old photo album, the one with pictures of his father. He smiled weakly. "I miss him." So did I. His father would have known what to do. Me? I just felt torn, between the love of a mother and the scars of betrayal. Still, seeing him try warmed something in me. He fixed broken things around the house, took Leo to school, even helped me in the garden. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. But deep inside, I couldn't shake the fear. Was this real, or just another performance? One evening, I woke up to voices downstairs. Whispers. I grabbed my shawl and quietly went down the hallway. It was David, on the phone. "Yes, I've been staying here." "No, she doesn't know anything yet." "Yes, the deed is still under her name." My blood turned cold. Not again. I listened as he spoke softly, mentioning a loan and someone interested in buying the property. I couldn't believe it. After everything, after all his words about change, he was doing it again. I stepped into the room. "Who are you talking to, David?" He froze. The color drained from his face. Then he hung up. "Mom, it's not what it sounds like." I cut him off. "Don't lie to me again." He sighed, covering his face with his hands. "I owed money, Mom. I thought if I could use the house as collateral." I couldn't hold back the tears. "You wanted to sell my home again?" He looked down. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know what else to do." Leo, hearing the noise, appeared in the doorway, clutching his teddy bear. "Daddy? Grandma?" We both fell silent. And that's when I realized, no matter how broken David was, Leo didn't deserve to grow up watching more betrayal. The next morning, David was gone. No note, no goodbye. Just his things missing from the room. My heart sank, but a part of me knew he'd done it to protect us. Maybe from the people he owed. I told Leo his father had gone to fix something. He cried that night until he fell asleep in my arms. Days passed, then weeks, no call, no message, nothing. Until one evening I heard a knock at the door again. 2 men stood outside. wearing black coats. "Is this the Dawson residence?" one asked. "Yes." "We're looking for David Dawson." I froze. "Why?" "He borrowed a large sum from our client. We need to locate him." My stomach twisted. I said, "He's not here. I haven't seen him." They looked around the porch, exchanged a glance, and left. But not before one of them muttered, "He better pay up soon." When the door closed, I leaned against it, shaking. He'd gotten himself into something dark. And now, it wasn't just about money. It was about survival. I knew what I had to do. Leo was innocent. He deserved safety, not to live in fear of men knocking on doors at night. So, the next morning, I called my lawyer again. The same one who'd helped me years ago. I asked him to make arrangements for legal guardianship. I told him, "If anything happens to me, everything goes to Leo. Not a single penny to anyone else." He agreed, and that night, as Leo slept beside me, I whispered a promise to him. "No matter what happens, you'll always be safe, my darling." It was almost midnight when I heard another knock. I opened the door, and there he was again, David. But this time, he wasn't the broken man I'd seen weeks ago. He looked desperate, dirty, terrified. "Mom, please, I need your help." I wanted to scream, but Leo came running, hugging his father. That hug stopped me from sending him away. He said he'd been hiding from the people he owed. He said he'd been trying to earn enough to pay them off, but they found him. And then, for the first time in years, I saw him cry. Really cry. Tears streaming down his face, his hands shaking. "I ruined everything," he said. "Dad would be ashamed of me." I knelt beside him, touched his face, and said quietly, "He would be, but he'd also tell you that it's never too late to start over." The next morning, we went to the police. David turned himself in. He told them everything about the loans, the threats, the debts. It took months, but he finally got a reduced sentence for cooperating. I visited him every week with Leo, and slowly, painfully, our conversations turned from guilt to healing. "Mom," he said one day through the glass, "you saved me. Again." I smiled. "No, son. This time, you saved yourself." When he was released 2 years later, he didn't ask for money. He just asked if he could come home to help me with the garden, to rebuild what we'd lost. And I let him. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about giving them a chance to prove they won't do it again. Now, years later, I sit on this same porch, watching Leo chase butterflies in the garden. David's inside, fixing the fence he once ignored. And for the first time in a long, long while, my home feels like home again. Maybe people don't change overnight, but they can learn. And sometimes the only way to truly see someone's heart is to watch them break and try to rebuild it. So if you ever lose faith in the ones you love, remember this. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to walk away, but it's also okay to forgive when they finally find their way back. Because sometimes, forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. If you want to know what secret Leo finds years later that changes everything again, watch the next story. They said Grandma left nothing behind, but when we cleaned her house one last time, we found a small door behind the old piano. A door none of us had ever seen before. Inside was a room filled with letters, all written by her, all addressed to us. And the first one had my name on it. I'm Lily. Grandma passed away 3 weeks ago. The house felt empty without her laughter. No humming in the kitchen, no soft footsteps at night. Just silence. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than words. We came back today to pack her things. But the truth is, no one was ready to let go. Dad kept pretending to be busy. Mom tried not to cry. And I just stood in the living room, staring at the piano she loved so much. That's when I saw it. A small line of light seeping from the wall behind it. We moved the piano aside. There it was. A small wooden door, barely 3 feet tall, painted the same color as the wall. You'd never notice it unless you were looking for it. Dad frowned. I didn't even know this existed. He pulled the handle gently. The door creaked open. A soft scent filled the air. Lavender and old paper. Inside there were shelves, boxes, and dozens of neatly tied envelopes. Each one had a name. David, Emma, Leo, Lily. And on the wall above them, in Grandma's careful handwriting, were the words, "If you found this, it means I've gone home." I reached for the envelope with my name. The handwriting was shaky but still beautiful. The paper smelled like her perfume. I sat down on the floor and began to read. "My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, it means I am gone. But please don't cry for me. I lived a full life, one filled with mistakes and miracles. And you, my darling girl, were one of the miracles. Just blurred my vision. But I kept reading. You've grown up in a family that has seen both light and darkness. You'll hear stories, some true, some twisted by pain. But remember this, love is not perfect. It's patient, it's fierce, and sometimes it hurts. But it's always worth it." Dad opened his letter next. I watched his hands tremble as he read. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, almost whispering, "She forgave me." Mom found her letter too. Short, soft, and full of quiet gratitude. Each one seemed to be written for a different purpose. To heal, to explain, to say what she couldn't while alive. There were even letters addressed to people we'd never heard of. Names from her past. Friends, neighbors, and a few with just initials. But one letter had no name. Just 3 words written across the front. "To whoever finds me." Dad hesitated, then handed it to me. "You should read it," he said. I unfolded it carefully. "To whoever finds this, I hope you understand that life is not about how perfectly we live, but how deeply we love. I've lived long enough to know that every soul carries regret. But the bravest thing you can ever do is forgive yourself." I looked up at Dad. He was crying silently, staring at the old photos on the wall. When I was your age, I thought love meant holding on. But now I know. Sometimes love means letting go. I hurt people I loved because I thought I was saving them. I kept secrets because I believed truth would break them. But in the end, truth is the only thing that sets love free. Her voice echoed in my mind. Calm, wise, familiar. It was as if she was right there, speaking from beyond the walls. In the corner of the small room was a wooden chest. Dad opened it gently. Inside were photographs, letters, and keepsakes from decades ago. There was her wedding ring, a locket with Grandpa's picture, a torn photo of Dad as a boy, taped carefully back together, and a small tape recorder. Dad pressed play. "Hello, my loves. If you're hearing this, it means I'm finally free. Free from pain, from fear, from all the things I could never say. I want you to promise me something. Don't let my mistakes define our story. Let our love do that instead." Her voice cracked near the end. "I may not be there to hold you, but every time the wind touches your face, every time you hear laughter after tears, that's me. I'll always be home, right here." The tape ended with a soft laugh, the same gentle laugh that once filled the house. No one spoke for a long time. The air was thick with memory and grief. Then Dad stood up, tears still running down his cheeks. He looked around the hidden room, the walls lined with Grandma's love, and said, "She built this for us, not to hide, but to remember." We spent the next few hours reading, listening, and rediscovering the woman we thought we knew. I realized something then. Grandma didn't just leave behind a house full of memories. She left a roadmap to forgiveness. People think love is loud, that it's about grand gestures, big words, dramatic goodbyes. But real love is quiet. It's in the way someone waits for you to come home. It's in the food left on the table when you're late. It's in the letter you write, even if you never send it. That was Grandma. She didn't just live. She loved in silence, through care, through time. And now, even in death, she was teaching us how to live again. When we finally finished, I stepped outside to the garden. The air was cool, the sky painted with fading orange light. In the corner stood the old tree Grandma planted the year I was born. Its branches stretched high, full of blossoms. I touched its bark and whispered, "I found you, Grandma. I finally understand." A soft wind brushed against my face. Warm, familiar. And in that moment, I felt her. Not gone, just transformed. If you love someone, tell them. If you've hurt someone, forgive them. Or let them forgive you. Because one day, all that will be left of us are the stories others tell and the love we leave behind. The screen fades to black. Soft piano music plays. The same tune Grandma used to hum. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to From Grandma's Diary for more heartwarming life stories that remind us of what truly matters. And remember, every ending is just another chapter waiting to be found. When Grandma died, I thought her story ended, but then I opened her diary. And on the very first page, she wrote, "If you're reading this, it means you finally found your voice." That's when I realized her story wasn't over. It was just beginning with me. It's been 6 months since we found Grandma's secret room, the one filled with letters, recordings, and memories she left behind. Since that day, nothing's been the same. Dad stopped drinking, Mom started painting again, and I started something too. A small corner of the internet called From Grandma's Diary. At first, it was just for me, to talk, to remember, to heal, but now, thousands of people listen, and they say Grandma changed their lives, even though she's gone. The thing is, I wasn't ready for what came next. When you share someone's story, you don't just carry their love, you carry their pain too. People started writing to me about broken families, lost parents, old regrets. One girl said, "Your grandma's story made me call my dad after 10 years. Another wrote, "I forgave my mom today because of her words." But then one message stopped me cold. It said, "I knew your grandma, but she wasn't who you think she was." At first, I thought it was a prank, but the message came again. "She helped me once, long ago. I think you deserve to know the whole story." It was signed, R. Jensen. I showed Dad the message. He looked puzzled. "Jensen, that name sounds familiar," he murmured. Later that night, I went to the attic, where we had kept the rest of Grandma's letters. In one box, hidden beneath a scarf, I found a small envelope that said, RJ. Inside was a faded photo. Grandma standing next to a young boy, maybe 12 years old, his arm in a cast. On the back, she'd written, "For every child who needed love and never got it." I replied to the message. We talked. His name was Robert Jensen. He was 58 now, the same age my dad would have been if life had been kinder. He said Grandma used to run a small charity program decades ago, helping kids from broken homes. She'd let them stay at her place for weekends, feed them, read to them, help with school. I was one of them, he said. She saved my life. But then his voice changed. Not everyone appreciated what she did. Your grandfather didn't. My heart dropped. Grandpa, the man we barely spoke of. I searched through Grandma's diary again that night, pages full of her neat cursive. And then I found it. A section tucked at the very back, sealed with red thread. I untied it carefully. Inside was a story, her story. I once took in a child who wasn't mine. He reminded me of the boy I lost. My husband didn't understand. He said love had limits. But a mother's heart doesn't. Tears rolled down my face as I read. They called me foolish. They said I gave too much. But if I hadn't, that child would have been gone forever. And now I know. Love doesn't run out when you give it away. It grows. A week later, Robert came to visit. He stood at the front gate. Older, tired eyes, but kind. When he saw Grandma's garden, he smiled. "She used to make me pull weeds here," he said. "Said the garden grows better when it hears laughter." We walked inside. He looked around slowly, touching the furniture like old memories. Then he turned to me and said, "She used to say one day, someone would tell her story. I didn't believe her, but I think it's you." That moment hit me like thunder. Maybe this wasn't just a diary. Maybe it was a mission. Running from Grandma's diary started to feel different after that. I didn't just share old memories anymore. I started reading her diary aloud, page by page, lesson by lesson. When you feel like the world doesn't need you, remember, even the smallest light can guide someone home. People began sending videos, stories, letters of their own. Mothers writing to daughters, sons writing apologies to fathers, grandkids sending old photos of grandparents they never met. It wasn't just a channel anymore. It became a movement. But inside, I still missed her. Her smell, her voice, the way she'd touch my cheek and say, "You talk too fast when you lie, Lily." I wished I could tell her what her words were doing, that her love was healing people she'd never even met. One night, I went live. It was Grandma's birthday. Thousands of people joined. Comments flooded the chat. "Happy birthday, Grandma. Your words saved my marriage. Because of her, I finally forgive my mom." I started reading from her diary. We don't get to choose who stays or who leaves. But we do get to choose what we leave behind. My voice broke halfway through. I paused. Then I looked at the camera and said, "She thought no one would care. She was wrong, because look at all of you. You are her legacy." The screen filled with hearts, tears, love. It was like the whole world was finally hearing her. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. After the live ended, I closed her diary. But as I did, something fell out. A small folded page hidden between the covers. In her handwriting, it said, "For Lily. One day you'll find that love has no age, no shape, no ending. When you speak, speak with kindness. When you write, write with truth. And when you love, love like it's the only thing that matters. That's how you'll keep me alive." I pressed the paper to my heart, and I could almost hear her whisper, soft, warm, eternal. "You did it, my girl. You carried the light." Months later, From Grandma's Diary crossed 1 million subscribers. But that wasn't what made me cry. It was a comment under one of the videos. A little girl wrote, "I showed this to my grandma. We started writing our own diary together. That's when I knew Grandma's story would never die, because every person who picked up a pen, every heart that forgave, every voice that spoke softly when the world got loud, that was her, living on through all of us. If you ever wonder whether your life matters, look at the people who smile because of you. Look at the hearts that heal because you dare to care. That's your legacy. That's your forever." Soft piano plays. The camera pans to the diary on the table. Open, fluttering gently in the breeze. A pen lies beside it. The next page is blank. Then Lily's voice. "Your story starts here. Fade to black." If Grandma's story touched your heart, subscribe to From Grandma's Diary and let her voice keep guiding us home. I never expected this. What started as a small corner of the internet, From Grandma's Diary, has reached people in more than 30 countries. Emails, letters, and videos started pouring in. Stories of families healing, parents reconciling with children, and children finding lost grandparents. And then, one message came that stopped me cold. "Your Grandma's Diary saved my family. We owe her everything." It's been almost 2 years since I first opened Grandma's secret room. Since then, I've been reading her diary aloud, sharing her lessons, and letting her voice reach the world. I thought I was just honoring her memory. I didn't know. People needed her wisdom more than I realized. Families wrote to me from every corner of the globe. India, Brazil, Canada, Japan, even small villages in Africa. They shared stories of anger, separation, lost love, and forgiveness, and how Grandma's words helped them reconnect. But with the growth came something unexpected. Not everyone understood the channel. Some people criticized me, saying I was exploiting Grandma's life for attention. Others doubted the diary was real. And the hardest part, some families sent messages asking me for help, asking if I could intervene, speak to loved ones, or even travel to them. And I realized I couldn't do everything. I felt overwhelmed. I wanted to honor Grandma's legacy, but I couldn't save every broken family alone. It started with a simple email from Italy. Dear Lily, I watched your video about Grandma's lessons on forgiveness. My father and I haven't spoken in 15 years. After listening, I went to him. We cried, we laughed, we finally spoke. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your Grandma's words. I stared at the screen. Tears blurred my vision. This was exactly why I started the channel. Then more emails arrived. Each one told a story of love mending what had been broken, of children reconnecting with parents, of spouses forgiving long-held mistakes. I realized something powerful. Grandma's wisdom wasn't just our family's gift. It belonged to the world. I began sharing their stories on the channel. Every week, a new family, a new story. There was Marco in Italy, who finally hugged his father after 15 years of silence. There was Aisha in Kenya, who forgave her mother for leaving her as a child. There was Hiro in Japan, who reconciled with his grandfather after decades of misunderstanding. The comments section became a place of support, love, and hope. People started sharing pictures of their families reunited. Sometimes I cried while reading them. Grandma's voice echoing in my heart, saying, "Even far away, love finds a way." After months of the channel growing, something incredible happened. Fans from different countries started messaging me, asking, "Can we meet? Can we share stories together?" I was nervous at first. Could a virtual community really meet in person? But then, on Grandma's birthday, we held the first global From Grandma's Diary meetup. Families from 12 countries, children and parents, young and old, gathered to share their stories. I stood on stage, looking at hundreds of faces, some crying, some smiling, some hugging loved ones they hadn't seen in years. And I realized Grandma had created something far bigger than I ever imagined. She hadn't just taught us forgiveness, she had inspired an entire generation to heal. One story in particular stayed with me. A boy named Sam from Canada wrote, "I watched your video, and it reminded me of my grandma. I hadn't seen her in years because of an argument between my parents. I called her today. She was so happy. We cried together, and I forgave my dad too." When I read this, I realized Grandma's lessons weren't just words. They were bridges connecting hearts across oceans. Then came a letter from Brazil. "Lily, your grandma saved my marriage. My wife and I were about to give up, but after listening to her diary reading, we talked, cried, and started again." Each story reminded me why Grandma's voice mattered, and it reminded me why I had to keep sharing. The channel reached 500,000 subscribers. To celebrate, I organized a live tribute event. A mix of live diary readings, fan stories, and personal messages. People joined from every time zone. Children, parents, grandparents, all sharing their experiences. During the live stream, I read a letter Grandma had written decades ago. "Love is patient. Love is brave. Love is forgiving. If you carry my words with you, you will carry me too." Comments flooded in. I finally hugged my dad. I forgave my mom. I reunited with my sister. I couldn't hold back my tears. Grandma's voice had crossed the world, healing families in ways we could never have imagined. The most emotional moment came unexpectedly. A woman named Maria from Spain sent a video message. She had grown up in foster care. She'd never met her grandparents. She said she felt connected to Grandma's voice in a way she had never felt before. She had found a box of old letters in her attic. Letters her grandmother had written to her own estranged daughter decades ago. When she read them, she finally understood her family's past and forgave them. Watching her on the screen, tears streaming down her cheeks, I whispered, "Grandma, look, you did this again." Her words weren't just healing her, they were healing me. After the global meetup and tribute event, I knew from Grandma's diary had to grow. It wasn't just a diary anymore. It became a platform for families to reconnect, children to heal, parents to apologize and forgive. I started a new series, Letters Across the World. Every week, I read letters sent by families who were healed by Grandma's wisdom. The messages kept coming. A daughter forgiving her father in Australia, a brother reuniting with his sister in India, a family starting fresh in Canada. Grandma's love had no borders. Her diary had become a lifeline for families everywhere. Sitting in the same room where Grandma kept her secrets, I realized something. She taught me more than how to share stories. She taught me that love, patience, and forgiveness don't stay in one home. They spread. Grandma never needed an audience. She just needed hearts to hear her. And now, her voice is everywhere. In homes, across cities, through screens, in letters, and in hearts. Her diary wasn't just a story of our family anymore. It was a story of the world. A story of healing, connection, and love that refuses to die. If you ever wonder whether one life can make a difference, look at the families Grandma touched. Look at the children who learned to forgive, the parents who learned to love again, the hearts that were mended because someone dared to care. That's what she left behind. That's her legacy. That's love. If Grandma's story inspired you, subscribe to From Grandma's Diary and let her words heal your family too. I never imagined her diary could do this. It started as words on paper, but now it's a lifeline. Families I'll never meet in person are writing to me, telling me Grandma's words brought them back together. Marriages healed, siblings reunited, fathers forgiven, and every story reminds me she's still alive in all of us. It's been 3 years since I first opened Grandma's secret room. Her diary, hidden for decades, has become a global phenomenon. I wake up every morning to emails, letters, and videos from people inspired by her words. At first, it was overwhelming. Thousands of stories from all over the world, each one filled with heartbreak, hope, and healing. Now, I've learned that every time someone listens to her voice, someone else's family finds peace. But not every story ends happily. Some families were too far gone. Some parents had passed. Some children had lost hope. Some marriages had already broken beyond repair. I struggled with this. Could Grandma's diary really fix everything? Then I realized healing isn't about fixing everything. It's about giving people the chance to try, to connect, to forgive, to love again. That's what Grandma always did. She didn't save everyone, but she gave everyone a chance. The first letters came from the United States. Dear Lily, I never thought I'd speak to my father again, but after listening to your grandma's words, I called him. We cried, we laughed, we even cooked together. Thank you for sharing her diary. Another from Nigeria. Your grandma's message made me forgive my mother. We hugged for the first time in 12 years. I feel whole again. And from Australia, your video brought my siblings back into my life. We're planning a trip together. Something we never imagined possible. Every letter hit me like a wave. Grandma's voice, soft, patient, full of love, was touching lives I would never see. Soon, video messages began arriving. A father in Germany filmed himself hugging his daughter for the first time in years. A mother in Brazil cried as she read her child's letter aloud. A boy in Japan showed me the first drawing he'd ever made for his grandmother. After hearing my grandma's words about cherishing family, I started posting these stories on the channel, not just to honor Grandma, but to inspire others. If this family can heal, maybe we can too, people would write in the comments. The channel became more than a diary. It became a bridge connecting families worldwide. One day, I got a message from someone in India. Your grandma saved my family. My father and I had not spoken in 20 years. After hearing her diary reading, we cried, forgave each other, and started again. But we wanted to do more. We want to connect with other families who were healed too. That's when I had an idea. I created a global family network. Families who were inspired by Grandma's words could share their stories, meet online, and even organize reunions. It started small. A few families from the US, Canada, and Italy. But soon hundreds of families were connecting, and every meeting reminded me of what Grandma always believed. Love doesn't have borders. Forgiveness doesn't care about distance. The first international meetup was held online. Families from 15 countries joined via video call. Children, parents, grandparents, all smiling, some crying, some hugging through screens. We shared our stories. A mother from Kenya spoke about forgiving her son for leaving home after an argument. A father from Canada cried as he told his daughter he loved her, even though she hadn't believed it in years. And each time someone shared, it reminded me, Grandma's diary had sparked a movement. Then came the first in-person gathering. It was small, only 25 families, but the emotions were overwhelming. Hugs, laughter, tears, the kind of moments that feel timeless. One little boy looked at me and said, "Your grandma saved my family." I smiled. She's still saving families, just through all of us now. After months of organizing, more stories came in. A daughter in Spain reconciled with her father after 18 years of silence. A family in Japan held a ceremony to honor grandparents they'd never known, inspired by Grandma's words. Siblings in Australia started a small foundation for family reunions. Every story felt like a miracle, but one story stood out. A young woman in Mexico had been estranged from her mother for 10 years. She wrote, "After listening to Grandma's diary, I flew home. My mother didn't recognize me at first. But we cried, laughed, and shared our lives again. I named my daughter after her, Sophia." I couldn't stop crying. Grandma's love had traveled across oceans. It had changed generations. I sat alone one night, reading letters from families worldwide. Thousands of messages, thousands of lives touched. Then I realized Grandma's diary wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was a tool for global healing. And I had a responsibility to continue it. I decided to dedicate the channel entirely to family reconciliation. Every week I read her diary aloud. Every week I shared stories from viewers. Every week I reminded the world of one truth. It's never too late to forgive. It's never too late to love. It's never too late to bring your family home. Families began sending photos from their reunions. A father hugging his long-lost daughter. Grandparents holding grandchildren they had never met. Siblings laughing after years of silence. One letter arrived from a woman in Italy. "Your grandma's words inspired me to reconnect with my sister. We traveled across the country to see each other. When we hugged, I felt Grandma's presence. I realized the diary had become more than a story. It had become a living legacy, spreading love and forgiveness around the world. Even strangers started calling each other family. Even strangers began learning what Grandma always knew. Family isn't just who you're born to. Family is who you love, forgive, and care for." Sitting in Grandma's old chair, surrounded by letters, videos, and messages, I felt her presence. She was smiling, humming softly and saying, "You see, Lily? Love multiplies, forgiveness grows, and family is forever." I understood then that Grandma's mission was never about us alone. It was about creating a ripple of love, one that could reach anyone willing to listen. And as I posted another story from a family in Brazil, I smiled, knowing Grandma's words would never stop healing hearts. Grandma taught me that one life can change many, one voice can heal families across continents, and one diary can become the bridge that brings the world closer together. Love doesn't end with a family. It spreads, it connects, it lasts forever. If Grandma's Diary inspired you, subscribe to From Grandma's Diary and share your family story, because her love can reach your home too. I thought Grandma's Diary only healed families. I was wrong, because soon messages started arriving from people whose lives were completely transformed. Not just their family relationships, but their careers, friendships, even their communities. One woman wrote, "Your grandma's words made me start my own charity. I never thought I could." And that's when I realized Grandma's love didn't just stay at home. It traveled further than I could imagine. It's been 4 years since I first found Grandma's secret room. Her diary has gone far beyond our family. Thousands of families have healed, reconciled, and reunited. And now, people are taking her lessons into the world, creating positive change that Grandma could have only dreamed of. I've started reading letters daily from people whose lives were transformed. Teachers, students, social workers, artists, even strangers helping strangers. Her diary became more than stories. It became a blueprint for love, courage, and kindness. But there's always a challenge. Not everyone knows how to transform grief into growth. Not every heart is ready to forgive. And not every community is ready to listen. Some people message me saying, "I tried, but I can't forgive my family." Others said, "I wanted to help my neighbor, but they hate me." I realized that while Grandma's words were powerful, they didn't magically fix everything. They offered guidance, they offered courage, they offered hope, and sometimes that's all a person needs to start changing their life. The first message that shook me came from a young teacher in Canada. Lily. After hearing Grandma's diary readings, I decided to start a mentorship program for children who felt abandoned or lost. I never imagined I could make a difference, but her words gave me the courage to act. Then came a message from a nurse in Kenya. I was burnt out, ready to quit my job. But your grandma's message about patience and love reminded me why I became a nurse. Now I approach every patient with care and kindness, and I feel fulfilled again. Artists, students, social workers, and ordinary people from around the globe began sharing similar stories. Grandma's diary was no longer just about families. It was inspiring personal transformations on a global scale. Some messages were about friendships. A young woman from Italy wrote, "I had stopped talking to my best friend after a silly fight. After hearing your grandma's words about forgiveness, I sent her a message. We hugged, we laughed, and now our bond is stronger than ever." A man in Australia said, "Your grandma reminded me that pride can destroy relationships. I reconciled with my childhood friend after 20 years. We even started a project to help homeless youth together." The diary became more than a family healing tool. It became a guide to reconnecting hearts everywhere. Soon, stories of community transformation started pouring in. A woman in Brazil shared, "After hearing your grandma's readings, I organized a neighborhood cleanup. We invited neighbors who had been distant or in conflict. By the end of the day, everyone was talking, laughing, and helping each other. Our street has never felt more like a family. A young man in India wrote, "I started volunteering at a local orphanage after listening to Grandma. Her words about kindness and compassion inspired me. The children and I now share stories every week. It's amazing." Her diary wasn't just changing individual hearts anymore. It was changing communities. One story struck me harder than any other. A woman in the US named Emily shared, "I was lost after my parents divorced. I struggled with depression and felt my life had no purpose." Listening to Grandma's diary made me realize that I could still bring love into the world. I started a small program at my local school, teaching kids how to express gratitude and love. The joy I see in them has healed me too. Another story came from a man in South Africa. I had been estranged from my siblings for years. After hearing your grandma's message about forgiveness, I reached out. Not only did we reconnect, but together we started a charity to provide clean water to rural villages. Your grandma's words gave me direction, hope, and courage. I realized then that Grandma's diary wasn't just about mending broken families. It was about changing lives in every way possible. After sharing some of these transformation stories on the channel, something incredible happened. Local news outlets started contacting me. International media wanted to cover the story. People were amazed that a single diary, written decades ago by a grandmother in a small house, was inspiring global change. Families were reconnecting, communities were transforming, and ordinary people were becoming leaders in kindness. The diary had created a ripple effect far beyond what I could have imagined. To celebrate, I organized a live interactive event. Families, volunteers, and people who had transformed their lives joined from around the world. We shared stories live. A nurse in Kenya, a teacher in Canada, an artist in Italy, a father in Brazil, all telling how Grandma's words changed their path. One young boy said, "Your grandma taught me to be brave. I forgave my mom and started helping my neighbors too." A woman cried as she said, "I never thought I could make a difference, but her diary reminded me I can." I helped start a community garden in my town. At that moment, I understood the full scale of Grandma's legacy. I sat alone after the live event, reading messages and watching clips. Her diary had done more than heal our family. It had rebuilt friendships, reconnected communities, inspired. Acts of kindness and courage changed lives across continents, and I realized my mission had changed too. Grandma had trusted me to share her words, but she had also given me something more: the responsibility to inspire action, courage, and love in every heart that hears her voice. I kept the diary on my desk. I still read it aloud every week. But now, it wasn't just about remembering her. It was about living her teachings. I thought of the families reuniting, the communities healing, the people discovering courage. I thought of every life touched by her words. Grandma once wrote, "One heart, one act of love can create a world of change." Now, I finally understood. Her words were not just for our family. They were for the world. And every time someone shared love, forgiveness, or hope because of her diary, Grandma lived on. Grandma taught me that a single life can spark 1,000 transformations, that love can cross oceans, languages, and generations, that forgiveness and kindness can change not only a family, but a community, a city, even the world. And as long as someone listens, acts, and loves, her diary will never end. If Grandma's diary inspired you, subscribe to From Grandma's Diary and share your story. because your love could change the world too. I never imagined I would travel the world because of a diary. But here I am, meeting families, holding hands with people who never thought they would see their loved ones again. And everywhere I go, I see one thing. Grandma's words aren't just on paper. They're alive. They're healing hearts, one family at a time. It's been 5 years since I first opened Grandma's secret room. Since then, her diary has reunited families, healed friendships, transformed lives, connected communities, and now I wanted to see it all firsthand. I packed a small bag, grabbed the diary, and set out to meet the families who wrote to me. Those who had been touched by her words. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew this journey would be unforgettable. Traveling to meet families across the world wasn't easy. Flights were long, languages were different. Some families had hesitated to meet me in person. And the hardest part, seeing families who were still struggling, even after hearing Grandma's words. I realized that healing is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but Grandma's diary had given people hope. And sometimes, hope is enough to take the first step. My first stop was Italy. I met Marco and his father, who had been estranged for 15 years. When I walked into their small home, they were already crying. Tears of joy, disbelief, and relief. "Your grandma, she saved us," Marco said, hugging me. I handed Marco a copy of Grandma's diary. He opened it, and I could see the same tears I had seen in my own eyes years ago. Her words. "They made me call my dad," Marco said. "We hadn't spoken in 15 years. And now, we're a family again." It was the first of many reunions, and it set the tone for the rest of my journey. Next, I traveled to Brazil. A woman named Anna had started a community garden after hearing Grandma's words. She invited neighbors who had long been distant or in conflict. When I arrived, dozens of people were planting, laughing, and hugging. "Grandma taught me to love beyond my family," Anna said. "And now, our entire neighborhood feels like one big family." I walked through the garden, watching children share stories and parents laugh together. Grandma's message about forgiveness, patience, and love had grown roots here, literally and figuratively. In Japan, I visited a small orphanage. A young man, Hiro, had begun volunteering there after hearing Grandma's diary readings. He shared stories of children who had never known love, until now. Grandma's words reminded me that even one act of love can change a life, Hiro said. I watched as children laughed, played, and read stories aloud. Some had never met their grandparents, yet, through Grandma's diary, they had learned about family, care, and hope. I realized that her words weren't just helping families. They were helping children who never had a family to begin with. In Kenya, I met Grace, a nurse who had been burned out and lost hope. "I was ready to quit," Grace said. "But your grandma reminded me why I became a nurse. To help, to heal, to love." Grace showed me a small clinic where she had implemented new programs to care for patients with love and compassion. Her staff was happier, the patients were healthier, and the community was stronger. Grandma's diary didn't just heal families, Grace said. It healed communities. I flew back home to organize one final global meetup. Families from every corner of the world joined, virtually and in person. Parents hugged children, siblings reunited, friends reconciled. Even strangers who had become like family met face to face. I watched as children read Grandma's words aloud. Parents wiped tears away. Neighbors held hands. Communities celebrated. At that moment, I understood. Grandma had created a movement of love that spanned continents, cultures, and generations. One woman, Maria, shared her story from Spain. I hadn't spoken to my mother for 12 years. After hearing Grandma's diary, I reached out. We hugged, cried, and forgave. Then I started teaching forgiveness workshops in my city. Your grandma's words didn't just change my family. They changed hundreds of lives. A young man in South Africa wrote, "I reconciled with my siblings after years of bitterness. Together we started a clean water project. Grandma's diary gave me courage to act." And a mother in Canada shared, "I hugged my daughter for the first time in 15 years. And we started a small charity to help families in crisis." Your grandma's words inspired all of us. Every story reminded me why I started this journey. To honor Grandma's voice, her wisdom, and her love. I sat in Grandma's old chair one night, surrounded by letters, photos, and videos from families worldwide. I realized something incredible. Her diary had done more than heal broken families. It had sparked a global movement of love, kindness, and forgiveness. Her words had traveled across oceans, languages, and generations. They had changed lives, communities, and hearts forever. And now, her legacy wasn't just in a diary. It was in every hug, every act of kindness, every reconciled family, every child learning to love. Grandma's life had ended years ago, but her spirit, her lessons, her love would never end. Sitting with the diary, I whispered, "Grandma, look at this. Your words saved the world, one heart at a time." I thought of every family reunited, every friendship healed, every community strengthened. "You gave me the greatest gift," I said softly, "the gift of carrying your love forward." Her handwriting, now worn with time, seemed to glow softly in the dim light. "Lily, my girl, this is why I left the diary. Love is endless, forgiveness is eternal, and family lives in every act of kindness." I smiled, tears streaming down my face. Grandma had given me the world, and now I was giving it back, one story at a time. Grandma taught me that one diary can change countless lives, that love can cross oceans, that forgiveness can heal generations, and that family isn't just those we're born into. It's those we love, forgive, and care for. Her diary was never just a book. It was a movement. It was hope. It was love. If Grandma's diary inspired you, subscribe to From Grandma's Diary and share your story, because love and forgiveness can change the world.